Hello, Artist Forge folks and artists out there in the wide world. Happy New Year and welcome to the first live stream of the new year for the Artist Forge. My name is Nicole York. I will be your host. And today with me are the wonderful co-hosts and talented artists and business people, Matt Stagliano and Becca Bjorky. Welcome, y'all. Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year.
I feel like this is uncomfortably close.
Yep. Give me a little space,
like
a little personal space.
I like it. So how is everybody? If you're hanging out in the comments today, I see David is with us. Hi, David. Happy New Year. Say hi and let us know that you're here. We're going to have a little bit of a year in review, and then we're going to talk about the concept of Ikigai. If you've never heard that before, we'll explain it later. So if you want to know, you should hang out and listen. So Matt and Becca, how are you guys doing? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been way too long. I think all of us have kind of rotated through, some of us doing a live and then others doing a live. And so I feel like we haven't had the whole gang together in a while, and it's just good to see your faces. Yeah, things are good. I can talk for days about what happened last year, but a lot of it you just want to forget. Yeah, just starting the new year, working hard, getting into it, trying to stay motivated and, make it to January 2nd. Oh, that's where we are.
We made it.
You did it.
You did it already. You have something to celebrate this year.
Perfect. I'm tapping
Proud
out.
of you.
Thanks. That's where I'm at.
Nice. Becca, how about you?
I'm really tired. Yeah. I learned a very important lesson this month, which is that anytime that my kids are off school, I also need to take that time off.
Rookie.
Yeah.
Rookie move.
Yeah.
But back to the grind. Back to the grind tomorrow.
Back to the grind. If you're hanging out with us today in the audience, how are you doing? How is your new year? How are you feeling? I know we talked kind of toward the beginning of like the switch between like fall and winter seasons. We talked about how everybody was kind of feeling that need to like hibernate a little bit and pull away from things and withdraw and like give ourselves some time. I bet that we didn't actually do that. Like, so if you've been with us and you went through that season 2 at the beginning of fall where it was like, oh man, I'm just feeling kind of wore down. I feel like I need to recharge and step away. And we talked about the importance of that. And then I think none of us did it. I think all of us were like hard charging into the holidays, like trying to do as much as possible. Did anybody actually succeed? If you're in the comments, did anybody actually take care of themselves over the holidays? Like, I would like to know. Hi, David. Happy New Year. Anybody do it? Any successes?
Oh, God,
I
no.
definitely did not.
No. I got on a skateboard and went downhill. I was just kind of like, let's do this. One of the struggles that I had last year, and I was kind of writing it down, thinking about, year in review kind of stuff, what's good, what's bad, and lots of good intentions, a lot of bad execution in terms of giving of myself too much. And it's funny, around this time last year, I wrote a blog post that said being selfish for others. And the whole point of it was to give myself more time to be me and lean into personal projects. And if I don't take care of myself mentally and physically, then I won't be able to do things for others at the level that I want to do them. And that didn't really work out the way I thought it would. Started good, lots of good intentions, but then the calendar just unraveled and I let everybody except for me take control of it. So that resulted in basically spiraling out of control. And that's saying something for me, beyond the daily spiral, to really spiral to a point of significant overwhelm, significant burnout, depression, isolation, removal from society, removal from everything. And it wasn't that I was necessarily in a super dark place. I just didn't have any energy to do anything. And the last thing that I wanted to do was interact with people, do social media, write blog posts, do all the things. I wasn't even really following up with clients the way that I like to. And it's not because I didn't want to. It was because, okay, that plate is spinning. Let me get over here and make sure this one gets going faster. Oh, okay, this one's starting to wobble. Let me go here and do this. So with all the best intentions, I meant to have more time for myself and just didn't do it. So not trying to make any sort of resolutions or new year, new me, not doing anything like that, but it's just a refocus on discipline and kind of self-care. Mindful living is really where I want to be.
I love that. I heard something, so I'm going to grab David's comment really quick. So Bassam can't be here with us today, y'all. He is at the clinic, but we miss you, friend. Looking forward to the next time you get to be back with us. And David's saying, nope, overloaded my brain working on a new niche for this year. And I think we tend to, as long as we're still moving, we get this feeling, like you were saying, Matt, that we're going to maintain everything spinning. Like if it kills us, we're going to keep those plates going. And I grabbed some books for the new year for my publishing business that I'm trying to get off the ground. And one of the things that the author said, which we all know this, and I don't know why we don't do it, is she essentially just said, like, you know, the downtime is supposed to be part of your schedule. So when you're building these systems for your business and for your life and whatever, downtime is supposed to be part of that. It's not just the thing that happens when you're too broke or too tired to continue, right? And we hear that and we're like, yeah, the self-help part of our brain is like, this is great. We know this. And then we just fucking don't do it. So I don't know what hurdle it is that makes us like stop there, or what obstacle it is that makes us stop there. But if y'all in the comments today, like if you guys in the audience, if you are like us and you did this to yourself, what is stopping you from really taking that seriously and scheduling the downtime into your life so that you don't have an excuse to take that? Because we got to figure out what those are and remove it.
Like it's bred into us. Maybe not bred, but trained into us a lot.
Capitalism-y? Is that what you're thinking?
It's capitalism-y. But I mean, like even other little, like maybe less obviously negative behaviors. Like, do you guys ever catch yourself like if you see like a friend or someone like starts a new hobby and they're really good at it and you suggest they start a side hustle?
No, but I immediately think I should do this.
Okay, or for yourself,
I
right?
can do it too.
They're like kind of related, right? And then it's like we have to find some way to be productive with whatever it is, our time, our money, our effort, our talent, whatever. And then we define productive itself as lucrative when it doesn't have to be that. And I think we just learned that, especially here in America. If anyone out there who's not from the United States, please tell me if you guys have a different attitude towards these things. But I feel like it's very hardwired into that American dream.
Been there, Nicole. I understand. Happens all the time. No, I get what you're saying, Becca. And yesterday I wanted to take the entire day off. Just, hey, everybody else on the planet is not working. So two things enter my brain. Now's the time to catch up, right? And and two, I felt like downtime, and this is a really dangerous place to be. Downtime is wasted time.
Yeah.
I had to really hear myself saying that and realize how destructive that is to not give yourself rest in any way, shape, or form. And this habitual need to produce and create, and not even creation in like that personal, I want to create something really cool. Just shit, I got to get this stuff done. And not giving yourself the proper time to rest just is so, it's antithetical to actually getting good stuff done when you're going into it exhausted and overwhelmed. And so I had to literally force myself to just sit on the couch, and it was tearing me apart.
It's when it gets to the point where you're relaxing makes you feel worse than you're going. You have to recognize at that point that something is off kilter, right? So David's saying, I'm a part of so many groups and systems, so this conversation is so important. Like, it's always go, 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 because the group is always posting updates and wins, and so you feel like you're failing if you're not winning every single day. And then David saying, you just summed up my life problem, non-productive is a waste of time. So my mom, I don't know if anybody has ever listened to country music before back in the day, but there was a particular song that my mom used to say was like the theme song for her life. And the chorus is, I'm in a hurry to get things done. Oh, I rush and rush until life's no fun. All I really gotta do is live and die, but I'm in a hurry and don't know why. And like, that is, we have like assimilated that, you know, into our psyche. And it seems like there's never enough time. There's always too many things to get done. But the weirdest part to me is that so many of these deadlines or these, that like this feeling, it's like existential feeling of like it ending, is self-imposed.
Yeah.
Like there isn't anybody who has set the deadline for us. It's not like we're trying to meet something somebody else has put in place in order for such and such a thing, you know, a reward or a whatever to happen. We've done it to ourselves. And then we've put ourselves in this position where we can't even relax afterwards. It's like, okay, what's the next thing? So my kids are downstairs on New Year's, like they're playing, and I'm sitting on my computer trying to design like the next thing for my website or whatever. And I sat here and I was like, I could be like playing cards with my kids right now or anything else. And yet the first thing, I haven't even crafted anything in a while because I'm like, this whole process is just dragging me down the stream like a dead fish in the water.
I want you to see something. So I hope I do this fast enough so people can actually read the words. But since last night, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to-do lists. Since last night, all different, some housework, some work, some catching up with people, some, you know, stuff that I'm creating and starting for 2023, 9 to-do lists, all multiple items. That right there, not healthy. There's a few things that we should be doing, and that's about all the mind can concentrate on. This amount of stuff is just unhealthy. I felt like I needed to dump everything just to give myself the visualization of what it is that I'm trying to do as one person with 24 hours in a day. I'm trying to do all of this stuff with the pressure to do it in a week. You know what I mean? So it's not a good place to be. And I realized that one of the things that I fell off track and why I'm in this place is that I forgot to force myself into the habits of meditation, of mindfulness, of rest, right? Of starting a daily ritual every day where you have that time, where you have that time to yourself to just reflect, calm down, get everything even, and then you have clarity as to what really matters. This, I feel like, has driven me to a state where everything matters, but at the same time, when I look at it with objective eyes, nothing matters.
I think that's so important that you said that just now. There was 2 things that really stuck out to me about what you said. The first thing is you're like, I have to force myself to meditate or force, right? And doesn't it seem strange, that word choice connected to something that you're supposed to kind of fall into like a warm bed, right? And yet force myself. And then the other thing is everything is important. Who decided this for us? Why do we, is this, I don't think that this is just a lack of the ability to prioritize too, because logically we can look at things and know which should come first. Something else emotionally is going on, which makes me wonder if this is really that case, like Becca said, it like if this is a systemic issue that is just built into the fabric of the systems that we are stuck in, whether that's like capitalism or whether that's hustle culture or whether that, which obviously those things are related, or whether that is, I believe that my value comes from this thing. And so once I'm not doing this thing, all of a sudden now value gone. The other side of that is, how many of us are neurospicy and our brains need to be going? And if they're not going, we start to get jittery, right? Like, oh no, cannot be alone inside my head or whatever it is. And so the thing needs to happen. And I bet it's a spectrum, and yes and no at the same time, and all of the things in between. But bless you.
Yeah, it's been hard to sit and reflect and then see kind of where you go off the rails, right? Self-reflection is always a little bit difficult, especially when you have to look at the nasty stuff and realize the behaviors that you've created for yourself, not that anyone's forced you into, or habits that you've created that aren't necessarily healthy. And looking at them is always a little bit more difficult than it should be. We should be able to look at these things and be like, oh, I just need to course correct a little bit and get my life back on track. And instead, I know personally for me, I beat myself up, and it actually makes it worse. Like, I'm not being productive, and I'm a piece of shit for not being productive. Right. And so everybody else is succeeding, in comparison and imposter syndrome, and just piles on, and that is where the recognition of it, I think, for me, is super important, because when something in your psyche is going, dude, pay attention to this. Understand that you cannot possibly do all of this. Where is it coming from? Why are you trying to do that? Where is it? And then you start digging, and you get to the people pleasing, and then you get to childhood, and you do all these things, and you're like, all right, got to ease up a little bit. And so this is why I'm trying to concentrate a little bit more on being mindful of all of this is just symptomatic of something else. What is that something else? Is it desperation? Is it loneliness? Is it drive? Is it good? Is it bad? Looking at it from a bunch of different angles to try to really answer the question of what's driving this behavior that is the complete opposite of where I want to be, where my heart wants to be, where I want to be aligned. And I do not feel like I have any of that alignment at the moment. So that's the first thing. How do I get in alignment? That's what I'm trying to answer now. Not the to-do list. How do I get back into alignment?
I love that you brought up the self-judging aspect. And I know I mentioned to you guys the last time that we were hanging out. I didn't tell the audience, though, so I'm going to share a little bit of my private life with you. I was visiting my doctor and getting my referral renewed for mental health. And as I'm explaining my life to her, she recognized that I kept using judging words in reference to my behavior. I was really bad and I didn't. Or, I'm terrible and I whatever. And she looks at me and she's like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you being so hard on yourself? Why are you using all of these words related to behaviors that are not actually bad or good? They're just behaviors, and you're judging them. And then, of course, feeling the corresponding guilt that comes along with judging those behaviors, even though I'm not actively saying to myself, like, most of us don't necessarily actively hear that interior voice going, you're a piece of junk. It just kind of is. It's so consistently in the background, those judging words, that we just kind of think them and inhabit them without ever, like you said, analyzing them. So I love that, Matt. And I think it's so important, even just to notice, like, if we can just slow down a little bit and notice the words we're using when we're describing to ourselves the things that we're doing, even if we could alter that all by itself, I bet we would see like big differences. So David's saying, watching Becca's kid reminds me how much we complicate life. Can't I just be like her and create and have fun and just sneeze on objects and not even care? You can if you choose to. Just don't do it around me, because I will get really grossed out. I still have some germophobia thanks to the pandemic.
One neurosis at a time, please.
I know. So Becca, you've been sitting down there making big eyes and essentially looking like you're ready to turn and run for the hills. So I'm really curious what's going on inside your head.
I'll just be Matt Jr., basically. That's about it. So I don't know, just many squirrel brain thoughts as you guys have been talking. And I did have, you mentioned earlier, Nicole, like, I could be playing cards with my kids. And I actually had a moment the other day in the middle of the night. It was like 2 a.m. One of my kids, he's on medication for ADHD and it makes it very hard for him to sleep. So he was awake at weird times. And we just sat on the couch and we like talked for like 2 hours. And I don't know when we've done that before, like that long. And he's about to be a teenager in like 3 weeks, so he's big kid with big thoughts and big ideas and stuff, much different than spending 2 hours on the couch with someone this size. But that did kind of set me off kind of like into this, why am I doing the things that I'm doing, kind of downward mental spiral. And I was then curious as Matt was speaking, like, with those kind of thoughts, those like, why am I imposing these stressors on myself? Why am I writing 9 to-do lists? Why am I doing all these things? I'm curious, do you guys have, what you'd consider like goals that
Let me look through my list. Hold on 1 second.
What?
I said, I'm just going to look through my list. Yes.
Goals in what? In
that are not related to work in any way.
Oh, no. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Nicole, I'm sure you and I might be on some of the same page here, but for me, Becca, my actual goals have nothing to do with work. My ultimate goal is to find contentment in all aspects, right? It's not financial. It's not anything. It's just content. I'm content with where I am. And I've been in a state of discontent for almost 50 years. So I want to find contentment. I want to find joy in everyday things. And I want to be able to help other people. Now, how I do that, whether it's through the creation of art, whether it's holding someone's hand, whether it's digging them out of a frozen lake, like, I don't know how I'm supposed to help people, but that is what gives me a ton of joy and a ton of satisfaction. So my goals, while I can write all my major business goals and, the housework that I want to get done and all these things, it really comes down to a feeling that I have of what I want my life to look like. And it has nothing to do with money or success or fame or anything like that. It's, I picture myself sitting on a porch watching a sunset going, things are good. That's it. Like reaching that level of contentment where I can just be, and be okay with it and not have to put my mind or my energy and my heart somewhere else. Now, that's not a state that I think I can attain 24/7. I just know myself too much. But those are the moments that I want to have more and more, where everything seems to be in alignment, where there's balance. But I just call it contentment because it can happen at multiple levels. But yeah, it's really interesting. I was only half joking. I've got my list of goals for things, and I look at them, and when I step back, I'm like, no, that's not important. That's kind of important. That's not really it. That's a to-do list item, right? They're not goals. It's just more of the same, and I'm just labeling them something different. So for me, a goal is more, what do I want my life to look like?
Right.
And not what do I need to do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, here's the second part of that question then. Are the things you are doing on a daily basis that are driving you, up a wall, leading to those long-term goals?
That is a matter of perspective for me, right?
And it's a great answer.
No, it
depends on how you look at it.
Depending on my mood, I can look at it and say, yes, all these little steps are getting me closer to being in a position where I'm content. Or, oh my God, I've got to do more. I've got to do more. I've got to do more. I'm failing. So it depends on the perspective that I choose to take. When I'm out of alignment, when I'm out of balance, I tend to lean towards the negative. I've got to do more because I got to get to this spot and I've got to get to this spot, rather than realizing that just the little steps every day, the atomic habits, if you will, right? All those little things will lead to the eventual place that I want to be. I have faith that I'm going to get there, faith in myself. But I try not to put a time on it, because then I'm just imposing pressure and creating different lines for myself where I could probably be making it harder than I need to by forcing myself down a road. I'm trying to relax, and it's difficult, but I know that that's the only place that I'm able to find that contentment and that peace that I want, is by relaxing and just kind of letting go of the control. Not good at it, right? But those are the goals. It's more emotional than it is financial or physical or, material.
The time thing is interesting.
In what way?
So, I mean, maybe it's just because I have children, or I don't know, and like worry about like mortality and stuff. But, I definitely have this fear of like, working myself to the bone until, I'm like 60 or beyond. I don't know. And then I don't actually have the time to reach those larger contentment goals. So
do you feel like that's an issue of so we were talking about that systemic thing, is we've kind of been conditioned to believe you work really hard and then you get to live your life, right?
Yeah,
and
that's crap.
Right. And we neglect the fact that no, your life is just happening all the time. Like that's just what's going on. And I know we talked before about making each day the kind of day that you love live, right? And that if you're not, and that doesn't mean obviously that we can't that we shouldn't be doing things we don't enjoy as just part of a larger picture, because that's just going to happen. But overall, like if tomorrow was the last one, would you be glad that you did the things that you did, or would you be happy with that daily life that you're living? And that fits into mentioning overall goals. I mean, when we look at that from a big perspective, those systems, it's because the goal sits up here by itself, and then to reach that goal we build a set of systems, and those systems are reflective of how we live every day. And so if the system isn't working, or if you're not happy in the system, it doesn't mean it was the only system that could ever get you to those goals, right? Like, and that's something I have to remind myself of, is I look at all of the different folks in my community who are doing amazing things, and they're reaching the successful milestones that I really hoped for in my own life. And they're all doing it in different ways. Like one person took this path and one person took this path, but they're each, hitting these things. And it's encouraging and also discouraging. It's encouraging because it's a reminder that there's no one right way to the top, but it's discouraging because it means that in order to get there, I have a whole bunch of failures in front of me. And most of my life, or like the way that I build my system, seems to be centered around how do I avoid failure instead of how do I chase joy.
I made a video.
And like, that's obviously also a cultural thing. I mean, some of it is clearly personal, but we have these, failure is a thing to be avoided culturally, right? Like you don't want to have failed. And yet I just thought of, interestingly enough, the closer you get to the top of the financial food chain when it comes to people who have like built really huge financial success, they have failed so many times in so many spectacular ways that it's incredible. And people up there at that kind of strata recognize that failure is it's a prerequisite to be able to get there. And yet here I am trying to desperately plan everything that can be scheduled in order to, avoid failure, when it's like everything I know I learned from failing at it. So why is that so scary? And why is it scary enough that the systems I build that constitute my daily life equal running from fear instead of running toward joy?
Well, I had a conversation with a really close friend of mine this morning who was having a hard time, and was feeling pretty bad about himself for various reasons. And the thing that kind of dawned on me during the conversation was we put so much energy into giving credence to the opinions of others. And this ties into failure. We're failing against whose standards? We are trying to live up to whose standards. And oftentimes we're seeking validation and we're seeking approval, and we're trying not to fail in the eyes of others rather than focusing on us and just the path ahead of us. What is that path, right? And it's always interesting when you think about people like Hemingway or Steve Jobs or Yitzhak Perlman, right? Where they're vanguards in their respective craft. And they got there through a lot of things, a lot of sacrifice, but a lot of discipline, a lot of adherence to their own values, a lot of goals. But where I come down to it is I'm trying more and more to not give a damn about what people think. By doing that, it releases me of a lot of this success failure, scales of saying I'm failing because I'm not doing what David's doing. I'm not doing, what Becca's doing, what Nicole's doing. Oh my God, I've got to do more. They're doing it this way. Let me try it that way. Oh, that failed. That didn't work. I suck at this. Let me go do it this way because this other person's successful and I want that too. Well, you don't know what they've done. And so when I start feeling like I'm caring more about what other people think than listening to my own inner voice, that's when I know I need to check myself a little bit. And so, Dennis, so I feel like it's time for me to just listen to me a little bit more, care less about others, not in a bad way, but like care less about what they think or how they've done what they've done, and just follow that true path for me. Sounds easy. In practice is a little bit more difficult, but I find that, in my friend's case, it was more about what are they going to say about me? How am I going to look? How do I get myself out of this? Like all these things that directly connected to how other people saw him rather than how he saw himself and how he chooses to live life. So yeah, it was an interesting thing that we were talking about that this morning. Maybe it's the time of year, but I feel like for me, the only path that I have towards the things that bring me into alignment is to not care about what other people think. That's really hard given how we all relate. Did that make sense? Or did I talk
No,
you
it
guys
did. I'm just
into-
waiting for Becca to talk because I can see she has thoughts.
Well, okay, so this is interesting because I've definitely had those kind of feelings too. And I feel like none of that is actually based on what other people think.
It's
And
based
it's all-
on what
it's all
you
you.
think of what other people think.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Which is maybe even harder to get rid of.
That's a better explanation.
Well, yeah. And I mean, like, because if we really asked other people, like even your colleagues or friends or, Facebook photography associates, like what they think, they probably don't really care at all. Or or they have a much higher view of your own success and, opinion of you than you think they do. So the real trick is tricking yourself into not projecting onto other people.
Yeah. So I want to grab a couple comments really quick because we fell behind with a couple of them. So Chris saying, I found that actively being grateful really helps drive contentment. Taking time to acknowledge what is going well makes room for that. And
100%.
definitely. And those exercises are so great. I don't remember where I was, but it was one of those, my car broke down and it was kind of a list of all the bad things that happened. And then they went back and flipped the script and said, I can't believe how lucky I am to have a car. I'm so grateful that I have the money for a mechanic. I can, just kind of going and flipping it backwards. That's always a really fantastic technique, especially to start the day with, just to remind yourself and to center yourself and in gratitude to start with. And then David saying, I'm 60 now and I still haven't reached any goals. Becca's still working 40 hours and trying to make a creative mark in life. And I feel you. And like, as somebody who has reinvented my career several times at this point, I really empathize and sympathize both with that idea of like, you have a thing in your head where you think you're going and it feels like you never get there. And it's incredibly frustrating, but I think that kind of ties into some of the things that we're thinking about and talking about now, which is what our perceptions are of those things. And as you were mentioning, Matt, you know, what other people care about, and then Becca talking about that's all that's still inside of our own heads. And for me, interestingly, it's less, I don't really worry about being judged by other people because I am a mean and good enough judge of myself. And so if I don't hit my own things, and if I don't live up to whatever like ridiculous arbitrary standards I have built for myself, like I'm great at judging that all on my own and feeling like I can't and I haven't. And I think that comes down to less wondering what other people think or assuming what they think. And because I've had that experience, Becca, where people will tell you what they think of you and you're like, whoa, no. I still haven't gotten out of my pajama pants for the day. Please don't think those things, because I'm a mess. But it comes down to less of that and more of the comparison game. Yeah. For me anyway. Like I will see people do the things and I know that I'm capable, and yet I don't seem to be able to do the things. And so I'm making up some scale that I'm judging myself against that doesn't actually exist. Because like you said, Matt, I'm only seeing this much of their lives. So I'm making up that and then measuring myself against it and falling short and then judging myself for it. So that's dumb.
That combination. So I guess, again, reference to private conversation. Nicole got to help me write an email yesterday that really wasn't hard at all, but I was freaking out about writing an email. It's stupid. I don't know. And I feel like I kind of hit that sort of similar epiphany about this. Like, I can do it. I can do this thing. Other people do this thing. I've done this thing before. It's totally fine. And then not being able to reconcile the fact that I can, but maybe not right now. So the both the I can't and I can feelings about whatever arbitrary task were like, I don't know, repelling each other like magnets. And it was creating this like big emotional stress for me. Just like you were saying with this, like I can do this. This is really not that bad. But it's like, well, how do we hit that point of like really being able to be fully honest with ourselves? Because I feel like that sort of is the stem of some of these high stress, long to-do list problems that we run into.
I feel like that's and y'all can tell me if you, especially friends in the audience, tell me if this is your experience, if you kind of fall into that neurodivergent, neurospicy area. Recognizing that you're capable, but then the way that your brain works doesn't feel like it always allows you to do the thing. It's almost like you look at the path and you go, I have to jump over that rock, climb up that tree, and leap over this thing, and I'm there. And you've done jumping, climbing, and leaping many times in your past. So you know you're capable of jumping, climbing, and leaping. And yet it's time to walk up to get past that section. You're like, nope. And you go in the other direction. And it seems like there's a literal, real physical barrier there stopping you from moving forward into the thing. And once you confront that, this is what it feels like happens in my brain. A firework where my brain just explodes into 8 million pieces and my attention goes pew, 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 pew. And then I'm like, no, I can't bring any of it back in order to concentrate enough to jump over the rock and climb the tree and whatever. That's a really inane, ridiculous way to explain like what happens in my head. But the stress of it comes from the knowing that you're capable and not being able to force yourself. And it feels like two hammers just.
Speaking of hammers, I've got another list. This list right here. So this list I made yesterday, and it is literally step by step of what I need to do to install an over the stove hood vent, drill through the side of my house, all that sort of stuff. In order to do it, I have to avoid a couple of problems. I have to cut some beams. I have to do, certain electrical moves and whatnot. Everything that I've done before, totally capable of doing every step in this process. Start to finish, this will probably take me about 3 hours of dedicated work. Knowing that it would only take me 3 hours of dedicated work, I decided to stand in the kitchen and stare at it for 2.5 hours yesterday, making sure that I had thought through all the issues. And then I was like, well, shit, I can't do it today. It's dark now. So it's been put off to another day. If I had just started the action and started the execution, rather than talk myself into this indecision, then I would have a thing that I could cook in my kitchen now, but I don't.
You just said talk myself into indecision.
Yeah.
Don't let me forget. I want to respond to that. Keep going.
But that's essentially what it is. And it happens often where, whether it's my website, whether it's SEO, whether it's marketing materials, whether it's reaching out to clients, the action itself, there is not a lot of pain there. It's the perception of the pain that I have of doing the thing that keeps me from doing it. When in reality, the pleasure that I could gain from scratching that off the to-do list, getting things done, moving on, relieving myself of that stress is so overwhelmingly more to me. I would love that. And I'm battling the talking myself into indecision and just doing the thing. So what I have to start valuing is more the feeling that I'm going to get when it's done, and visualizing how good I'm going to feel when it's done, rather than thinking about all the things that could go wrong that are going to keep me from feeling good. So it's a subtle shift, but it's a shift in focus. It's a shift in value. And so this is what I'm trying to do for me, so that I can say, yeah, I can do all of this. I'm going to make mistakes along the way, but it'll be fine. And just do the thing rather than try to think it through to perfection and then never getting anything done.
Yeah.
Oh God, I think I made Becca blow a circuit.
I'm going to share David's response real quick. Yep. It's like I reach certain blocks and the solution is things I literally know how to do, but I'm like, there's no way. And as you were describing that, because I was thinking this earlier and I was trying to remind myself that I wanted to get around to that point, but it's this dichotomy of analyzing and acting, and how the analyzing it's trapping, right? Like it's like a prison of your own brain. And the only way out is action. And yet you can't justify the action to yourself unless you can guarantee the solution. And there's never a guarantee of the solution, right? There's no such thing as that. For some reason, we believe that that's possible, but it doesn't exist. And that has been the kind of kink in the chain of my life, is the overanalyzing of everything. Even this conversation of what we're doing right now is all based on analyzation. And so I live really deeply inside my head. But the times when I'm happiest, least stressed out, most centered are when I'm moving, when I'm doing, right? Like I'm hiking or I'm climbing or I'm crafting or I'm making. Those are the times when I feel the pressure of everything else the least. And we've talked about this before, but like the best answer almost always is just to go. Just go. Stop thinking about it. Only think about it, the absolute minimum amount it takes to do. And then once you have enough to do, go. Because if you don't, you're just going to sit there and paralyze yourself over and over again with possibilities that essentially, my mom likes to say, you're building bridges that you don't even know if you're going to have to cross. So you're just taking all of this time and effort to stress yourself out and build these possibilities and account for these possibilities and then trying to decide which route is the best route. And it's like, no, just go. You're not going to know until you're standing there. And if it's not the right one, you can turn around and walk in the other direction. But unless you take that first step, you're never going to know in the first place. And then you're going to be tortured by possibilities of, well, what if you did? And maybe you could have, and you won't know if you didn't try. So like, God, just go.
This is that, because at the beginning of this conversation, before I commandeered it, there's this notion of ikigai, right? But what we're talking about there of just the action and the small steps and all that, that's Kaizen. Is that what it is? And I feel like that's where I need to practice more is just the small steps. You look at it, you get overwhelmed, but you know what? Move that one book to the other shelf. Whew, take a breather. I'm done. Right. And then do it again tomorrow, and then do it again tomorrow. And then by the end of the week, you have all the stuff moved. Right. And it's those little bits where I'm the type of personality where if I can't do it all at once and have it be totally complete and finished, I don't start it. And that's a terrible place to be, because most of the things that I have, I just don't need to be done in one go, right? I don't need to clean everything out of my studio in one go. I can do bits and pieces here and there, right? So it's that Kaizen part. I couldn't think of the word, but
that is. So for folks who have never heard that before, it's a Japanese term. It essentially means continuous small improvements toward a goal. It usually has to do with business. So like, and systems, like the systems, everybody's continuously small improvements toward the end thing. And then Ikigai is like this, a sense of that this is the meaning of your life, the purpose of your life. And so we're going to kind of tie those things into the conversation today. I lost what I was going to say, but I'm going to grab these. So Sisla was saying, I love this idea of visualizing the end goal. I'm so good at talking myself out of things for my immediate comfort instead of looking at what I'll get out of it long term. We're going to address that really quickly, because here's another thing Becca got to be a part of. I have been having stomach issues over the last probably, of the last little while, likely tied to stress, probably. But my doctor was like, hey, sometimes if you are producing too much stomach acid, which absolutely can be tied to you being stressed out or whatever, we'll just run you on a course of kind of acid depressants essentially for like a month. And if that covers things, then then that's good. For some people, they can just do that and be done and it's fine. So she's, and they're, very mild, like not very serious medication. I have issues taking medication, even if it's antibiotics for an infection. I'm like, no, what if, like in my head, what if it messes up my gut bacteria? And what if it does this? And what if it and then in 5 years, I turn around and I'm like, oh, it was the pill, like that did the thing to me or whatever. So I have already catastrophized all of these potential possibilities that I have no way to know if they are going to happen or not. And I am willing to sit in my discomfort rather than chance the possibility of those things happening to me. Instead of taking an ibuprofen, I'm willing to sit here with a crippling headache because I'm willing to sit in that discomfort. And so I think it was Kate, but Becca and Kate and Olga they were helping me, piling on me in a good way, with love. But essentially the conversation went like, yeah, but what if it does the good thing? And it's like, oh, I forgot that maybe everything could go right. And that's actually a possibility. Why do we write that off? Like, I want to now just move into everything in my life with the assumption that it's going to be successful. I just want to do that now.
And I think you should. I think you should also post David's comment about the recipe book. I'm seeing this, and this made me laugh out loud. Like,
I feel like my life feels like a recipe book sometimes. People have the answer to things and shout it from the rooftops, but I'm like, but what kind of pan are they using? I can't do it until I get that specific pan. Lays on the couch, paralyzed with fear. Yeah. And so we've talked about this before, but I want to grab it and tie it in. Your brain was not designed to make you happy. Your brain's job is to keep you alive. It doesn't really care if you're happy as long as you're alive, which means that one of the main like evolutionary prerogatives of your brain is to keep you safe, which means if fear shows up, then your brain is telling you that is dangerous. We don't know what that is. We can't predict the outcome. Please stay where you're at, because at least now we know we're alive. And so when fear shows up, we automatically justify reasons to not confront the fear and to stay wherever it is, even if it hurts, right? Mm-hmm. So here's me sitting in my discomfort because I'm afraid that my antibiotics are going to do something to me down the road. I'm willing to live in that discomfort. We're willing to live with the comparison. We're willing to live with fear of other people's judgments. We're willing to live with the fear or the regret of not completing the things we desperately want. We are willing to live with all those things if it means that we can stay safe and at least marginally or relatively comfortable. Whatever we're secure in, we're willing to like stay there despite all of the other things, unless we recognize that the fear is not an accurate predictor of the outcome. It's merely your brain's way of keeping you safe. So if you can account for that, like, I'll use a stupid rock climbing analogy, but when you go to climb, you are climbing using a rope that is strong enough to haul a car, right? Like that thing is bomber. It is bomb proof. The bolts that are in the wall, like you could build bridges on those things. These things are strong. And yet somebody will still get tied in and go, but what if I, right? Nope. We've gone far enough to make sure that we're taken care of. We've made the plans. You're good. Get on the wall and just go. And that's kind of what we have to think about when our fear shows up and it stops us from doing the thing. And it's like, no, I need the pan. No, you don't. Make it in a fucking shoe. Like, do anything now. Just do it. Like you've gotten to the least, whatever the bar to entry is, as long as you're over that, I feel like go and you can figure everything else out from that point. But if you don't, then you're training your brain. Not a shoe. It's, if it works. If you don't, then you're training your brain to trust that fear response, or your body even to trust that fear response, instead of saying, hey, fear is just a road sign that's like, shit happens out there. You're now where shit doesn't happen because it's safer where things don't happen. Fear is just the fence. That's like, cool. I've accounted for that. Now it's time to go.
I think it's important too to differentiate the different types of fears, right? So there's the fears that we're all hardwired with, right? Fire's hot, right? Falling hurts, things like that, right? There's certain fears that are hardwired in the caveman brain that we have. But all the other fears, what happens if I send this email and they get upset? What happens if my mushroom doesn't craft the way that I want it to craft, right? If those fears, if they were real, we would all have them. They're produced by ourselves. All these little minor fears we produce ourselves based on whatever experience we've had. That doesn't mean that it's a real fear. It might feel real. It might trigger that response in us, but it's not necessarily something that has the odds of happening, right? But we can actually create the outcome, the negative outcome that we don't want, by leaning into these fears that are not real.
Well,
right?
that's the whole problem with building those bridges, right? Is that your fear is not in response to the truth of the situation. Your fear is in response to your imagined outcome.
Yeah.
And if you're in the habit of imagining a bad outcome, then you're going to build fear into yourself every time. It's going to become a trigger. This is why I live with anxiety, right? Because my thing is, oh no, my hand hurts. It's hand cancer, right? And that is my brain's immediate reaction, because I've responded to it that way enough times that the neurons that fire together wire together, and now they just go. And so if every time you think about stepping out of your comfort zone with your job, or giving up the thing that you hate so that you can get the thing that you love, and yet your response is, but what if I fail? And then you start sweating and your stomach cramps up and your hands start shaking and you feel the need to flee, that fear response is real to your body, because you imagine shit so well that your body is responding as if it was real, and it's not. The fear is not an accurate predictor of outcome.
I have a question that, Nicole, maybe you can answer here, because feelings like fear or anger, they are useful evolutionarily. I mean, they serve a purpose, and they do serve us in our modern world outside of whatever jungle we crawled out of thousands of years ago. But so when we get that fight or flight feeling, right? The heart's pumping and the adrenaline's rushing through us, and we don't take action, is that then why it becomes so difficult and makes it worse for us? Because we're not actually taking the physical action that our brain is perhaps desiring. Because considering if our life were in danger,
Mm-hmm.
we think back to our early Homo sapien ancestors once upon a time. Danger probably is going to require us to like climb a tree or run away or stab someone with a stick or something, right? But in the case of like current modern day, where the danger is my boyfriend's going to be mad at me or I'm not going to meet my deadline, and we're not able to meet the body's physical needs that the fear elicits, I wonder if that is what perhaps leads to this kind of compounding learned anxiety in some way. But you know more about body things, so I'm curious.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much I know. I just know, at least from my own experience and, you know, whatever research and stuff I've done. But so part of the issue with these responses is that there is not a proper action to take.
Right.
So it's right. So it's in response to a thing that doesn't exist. And it's in response to a thing that evolutionarily we're not coded for. So a lot of the things that we have now, we're kind of building epigenetic triggers. So when we talk about fears that are related to being human, things like fears of spiders, fear of fire, like all of that kind of stuff, we have been traumatized as a species. And those traumas essentially encode themselves in our genes, and then they get passed on to the next generation. And so that's why babies who have never seen a spider before can see a spider and be terrified, because that is essentially encoded in you by nature and by the way that humans function. We also then have these epigenetic triggers. So these are essentially triggers that get turned on environmentally, right? So maybe my mom had her brothers dumped spiders on her when she was little, absolutely traumatized her. She's terrified of spiders. This is also kind of true. I am afraid of spiders to a normal extent. I have no fear of other things that make people afraid, like snakes. I'm like, ooh, you know, I found this on the ground. For whatever reason, epigenetics did not trigger that in me, even from the time I was a kid. So I would walk in the house with snakes in my hands and freak my mother out. But when those triggers turn on for other purposes, as you know, like fear exists based on past experience. So if you encounter something that's bad, your body remembers traumas way better than it remembers anything else. And so when that happens, your body goes, shoo, we do not like the way this feels. This is dangerous. Remember this for the future. And then all it takes is your imagination connected to a similar event in order to trigger that thing to happen the next time. And because there isn't a physical reaction that can actually fix the source of the fear, you learn to become afraid of your fear. And then you're afraid of the fear response. And so that's what starts to trigger that anxiety loop, which is like, okay, the bad thing happened. It gets encoded in your brain and body so it can protect you from it the next time it happens. But it felt so bad that you don't want to feel that fear anymore. So the next time something happens, you go, uh-oh, that's not good. The fear feels bad. We flee from the fear. And pretty soon, all we have to do now is think of the situation for our body to go, no, 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 no. And it perpetuates itself. And there is not a physical way to make that stop. Although if you do things like walk, climb, run, whatever, you're going to be able to at least handle the physical responses. Like if you have adrenaline pumping, then you can at least handle that part of it. And it does make it generally easier to deal with the stress of that. But like it's the fear of the fear and your brain's ability to predict outcomes that makes that whole cycle become evil. As David said, girl, my ancestors were scared of all the things. My DNA is being held together with trauma and Elmer's glue. I feel you.
I wanted to drop in there also for David, because I know in the comments he said, like, I never thought of the brain this way.
Right.
Because your brain doesn't have a brain.
Right.
It has no concept. Yes, darling, hold on. It just constantly blows my mind that the brain cannot differentiate between what we might define as trauma or not. And so these little tiny things that maybe, you know, logically with our big, delicious human brains don't seem like that big of a deal. If they affect your brain in that way for whatever reason, because you're afraid of the fear, whatever it is, your brain is going to elicit those same responses where, you know, whether it's like watching someone die or, you know, I don't know, someone was mean to you in the 4th grade and like cut your hair in class or something. Like, you know, like your brain is processing the same way and it doesn't know the difference because it is not sentient in the way that we as an entity are.
No, then that's the thing that we have to remember is all your brain can do is interpret electrical impulses. Mm-hmm. And you will get the same electrical impulses from a really strong imagination as you will from doing the actual thing, which is why athletes, like high-tier, high-level athletes, go through visualization practices, because you're essentially training your brain the same way that you would do with muscle memory going through an action. So I've trained my brain really, really well to respond badly to a lot of different things, right? And we do this because we don't know that we're training our brain. Like we don't think of ourselves every time I let this overpower me, or every time I give into this thing, or every time I do whatever, I'm training my brain to continue my life this way. Then when that happens, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, a lot of concerted effort to retrain yourself out of that. So it's so annoying.
You know, and this is why friends are important. This is why therapy is important. This is why, you know, having the courage to look at yourself a little bit deeper is super important. I've got great friends that you were talking earlier, Nicole, about the judging words that you use. And I have friends that catch me every time I say I should be, or I coulda, or whatever, you know, and they'll call me out on it. And I love that. I appreciate it because I'm not aware that I'm necessarily saying these things, right? They just kind of fall out of my face. And then it's, you know, on the therapy side, there's a bit more perspective that, okay, you're saying these things, they could potentially tie to these other things, these other responses that you had earlier in life. And, you know, you can go down the rabbit hole. We could do the whole matrix thing about, you know, the electrical impulses and do we exist and all that, right? And a whole different conversation.
Simulation. It's all a simulation.
It's all a simulation. But the point is, I think the more that you look internally and the more that you start to identify, oh, I actually feel fear, rather than just feeling the fear, observing the fact that you feel the fear is a huge step in just understanding how your brain works, right? And when you start to look at it like all of my lists, this is how my brain works. This is how, when you start to look at it that way, you can at least map things out and be like, oh, I'm doing this weird thing because of this thing over here. And I really don't care about that thing. So if we can start to understand how we ourselves function rather than how we should function or how someone else functions, and we want to project ourselves onto that, if we can just understand our own little idiosyncrasies, that is a huge step that a lot of people just don't take. And I think as artists, we tend to live in our heads a bit more than, you know, whatever tech bro is out there. But I think if we can understand, differently, look at things differently, we might understand ourselves better. This is why I play with psychedelics. This is why I play with elixirs, because I want to look at things from a different point of view and see if it gives me any answers. It's not going to necessarily change my life, but it's just giving me perspective that I might not be able to get anywhere else.
I love that. So in addition to the earlier bits I got, my husband once told me, if you artists spent more time doing the art and less time talking about doing the art, we would be a whole lot happier. Shots fired. Oh, it's very true. Okay. We are a little bit over time today, but it's been a really fantastic conversation and I think kind of deeply needed. And I just want to check with everybody. So if you're in the audience today and you have any final thoughts, or like if you had an epiphany or something you think after being part of this conversation or listening, was there something that stuck out to you that you feel like you can take to make your life better or to put into use, or just a thought you want to leave everybody with, leave that in the comments and we'll grab them. Matt and Becca, do you feel like there was anything out of that conversation that is like just a lantern hung there where you're like, yep, I need to remember this?
I want to send David new pans.
David, what pans do you need for your life recipe?
He's a hex-clad guy, I can tell right now.
Clearly, he needs a shoe.
He needs a shoe.
I think, for me, it's an important conversation to have at this time of year where everybody's so, look, I had a great year in review, new year, new me, all this sort of stuff. And it has the potential to backfire for those of us that think differently. And so just having the conversation, understanding that it's okay to feel this way, but it just takes a little bit of introspection, I think is important. So I just, encourage everybody to do this, just to think about it a little bit more. Not get yourself into a state of anxiety, but just think about how your brain works a little bit more.
That's what I'm on. I want to figure out how to better hack the brain.
I know a guy.
I know a guy. I actually am thinking, which is a kind of meta thing to say, I'm thinking about thinking less. I'm thinking I need to stop thinking so much and believing that if I can understand a thing, I can fix it, because that's not necessarily true. I'm just going to start doing shit. Like, I'm going to try to spend less time inside my head and more time feeling and more time doing. And just, I'm going to start with the assumption that everything is going to be successful. Like, that's going to be my assumption. I'm going to move into everything as if it's going to be great. And I'm not going to look at the lessons that I learned along the way as failures. I'm just going to look at them as ways that I can do it better next time. So I feel like my brain is both maybe my biggest strength and my biggest weakness. It's like the two sides of the coin, right? Like the foil and anyway, I can spend forever thinking about things and talking about my thoughts about things and thinking about other people's thoughts about things. And at the end of that, what do I have? Nothing I can hold in my hand, no feeling that I can feel, no deeper connection to the other person. I don't have anything after that, except having done it all in here. So I'm just going to start doing the stuff and thinking less. I'm just going to do. I'm going to be Nike.
That's pretty solid. I said something similar to Josh, my husband, this morning, actually. We were talking about brains, and I was like, I think this is why I stopped studying psychology in school, because I can draw you a map and explain why things are happening, and it's not helping. It's not actually helping. But yeah.
Sometimes I feel like that's the trap with philosophy, is that you learn all of this great stuff, and when the epiphanies hit, you get these dopamines, and you're like, yeah, oh, and you get really excited about it all, and then you look at your life, and you're like, nothing has changed.
Nothing at all.
I'm just gonna go do stuff. Sorry, y'all. We'll have to close up real quick. That's my husband, so he's probably trying to figure out what to get for dinner. All right, so you can start the new year off being a mess, and it's fine. I'm a mess. And you know what? I'm just going to keep going and trust that I'm going to be less messy on the way, or that if I don't, I can still be a happy mess. That's what I'm going to leave you with today. So glad that everybody joined us today. Love the discussion that we had with you guys and the comments that you left, and being able to connect with you. We will be, our brains are trash and nothing matters. Happy 2023.
God, I love David.
He's the best. I'm just like, who said, I just said that I'm a mess. What does that even mean? According to who?
That means you're in good company here in the Mess Club.
We're professionals. We've got jackets.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Have an amazing week. We will be back here on Monday, having the same kind of conversations. If there's something you want to hear us talk about, don't forget, head over to the Artist Forge group in Facebook land. If you are not already in there, you can join. It's a private group. We keep it private to keep you guys safe. So hop in there. Let us know what you would like to hear us talk about. Yes. Progress. That's much better, Dennis, than saying for some reason. Oh, there it goes. That's much better than saying a mess. We're all works in progress. Let us know there, and then we can bring those topics forward into coming weeks. In the meantime, go make something amazing. Go do stuff with your body. And we will see y'all next time. Bye, everybody. Happy New Year.